Okay, in this section what we're going to do is take an overlook at the iMovie application. But before we do that, I'd like to just take a few moments about how can we use editing in the classroom. How can we do it? Well, what I would say is what we do is have two students operating the computer, one looking after the mouse and the clicking, and the other looking after the keyboard and the applications. And that computer is hooked up to a data projector. And that data projector allows the whole class to participate in the project. You can have classroom collaboration, they can have creative discussions about what shots to use and what shots not to use, and basically how to edit the film all together. Allows the class to basically creatively discuss the editing process. It also helps on classroom management, where from a point of view that everybody is participating in this one classroom project rather than having individual projects going on while two people are editing in the corner. So let's take a look at the iMovie application by clicking on it, and up opens up our loading window, and here is the iMovie application. The first part is the viewer, which is where we'll see things. The second part is the shelf, which is where the footage is stored as you import footage from your camera. And if you leave your mouse hanging long enough, you will notice that a description comes up of what each area is. The bottom part is the timeline, which is where all the clips go. And whichever order you put the clips in the timeline is the final order you'll see them in the viewer. And the other part is the editing pane, which we've got different parts there. If you find that if your iMovie is not fitting the screen, you hit the green button. Or you can resize iMovie by clicking on the rigid ends in the corner right hand side by dragging it from one end to another, and you can resize iMovie, and once again click on the green to bring it to the full size again. And you've got the full size there. So once again, let's just have a look at this editing pane part here. If I leave the mouse hover, up will tell me what it is. I call this a storyboard mode. iMovie calls it the video clips. And I call this the clock view or the timeline viewer, and iMovie calls it the timeline. The other option here is if you can switch to the camera. If you switch to the camera, this will allow you to control the camera and bring in the footage off your camera. When I click on it, you'll notice that, oh, here's a great example of what can happen. At the moment, my camera is set to the camera mode, which means iMovie is showing me real time what the camera sees. This can happen a lot, so what you need to do is make sure the camera is set into the VCR mode, which means that we're looking at, there we go, which means that we're looking at what's on the video camera tape rather than what we're seeing through the video camera lens. Once it's in, you can click on import, and that'll import the footage, and all the footage that's imported will be stored up on the shelf. And of course, we can use the rewind, the play, and the fast forward. The other option here is the scissors. The scissors is very much will allow you to see what clips you're on the viewer and allow you to cut those clips. The scissors comes from the film terminology in the olden days when they used to film on real film, and they used to then cut the sequences with the scissors and then strip them together. So this is where the whole scissors and cutting comes from. And over here we've got the volume level. The key thing to remember about this is the volume only controls the headphones volume and not the volume on the timeline, which affects the film. So that's something to remember, and it's quite important to note. We'll come back to how we do that later on. Clips will show us all the clips we've imported. Themes is something we'll come back to later on. Media, you have the option, oh, this is something that won't happen on your iMovie. Media, we have audio or photos. And you can import your photographs or your music. In audio, you can import from iTunes or sound effects and allow you to access everything from iTunes. And photos will allow you to access stuff from iPhoto. What I love about this is that everything is integrated in iMovie, that you don't have to go outside iMovie to get your music in or your photographs. Everything is shared within it, and I love that, the whole simplicity of it. We've also got editing, which we can do titles, transitions, video effects, and audio effects. And then finally we have chapters, which allows us to add chapter markers for a film, which we can share to iDVD later on, and this is something we will be coming back to later. The last thing to have a look at is the file size down here, which tells us how much free space we have on our machine. This is very important. You must make sure you have at least 2 gigs free on your machine when you're editing, otherwise your machine will get very slow.